So yeah, getting this started, man. How would you describe what it is that you do, what you talk about, and really what's behind your creativity online?
Uh, I'm in this process of becoming, like all of us,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in this process of becoming. My past, my history is, I grew up poor in the Appalachian Mountains, went to law school to escape poverty. Had a big spiritual awakening literally 6 months after I passed the bar that set me on this crazy spiritual path that I've been on since 2011. I spent a decade as an attorney and Kriya yogi, doing my meditation practice every day and all that. And then in 2019, I found plant medicines. And that was an answer to a prayer to deepen my awakening personally, and also to be of greater service to others in a healing capacity.
Mm.
And so what has emerged, is this sort of tantric shaman yogi who's also a lawyer. And that's sort of what's emerged as who I am and am becoming. And in the end of 2021, I literally just gave my law practice, my interest in my law practice to my partner. I was managing partner of a small law firm, and joined a friend down in Austin, Texas, to start a medicine church.
Wow,
Started serving medicine down there and helping people. And I've been on that path ever since.
that's amazing. Oh man, what kind of medicine, if I can ask?
Well, Chuma is what I serve. That's what that's what I was initiated into to serve. And I continue to be a student of other medicines. I work a lot with ayahuasca and peyote. So,
And what is Wachuma exactly?
San Pedro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing, man. So, how would you describe what this quote spiritual awakening was in 2011? What kind of insight was dawned upon you in that year?
Well, I was literally in 2011, 6 months after passing the bar. I was sitting at my desk. I was associate general counsel for a community bank. I was sitting at my desk. I was an atheist at the time. I was very mystical growing up, and I pretty well rejected, the fundamentalist Christianity I was raised with out of the gate. But I was very interested in druidry and earth-based spirituality. Then I went to college and majored in philosophy, and they turned me into a good Western philosopher and atheist, right?
Mm-hmm.
This whole reductionist materialism model.
Yeah.
And that really was a part of a pretty severe dark night of the soul. Really severe dark night of the soul. These feelings of alienation that I had really felt all my life were just accentuated, and feelings of depression. And as you do when you have a dark night of the soul, you go to law school. So that's what I did anyway, and went to law school. Decided I would, since there's no point to life, I would just get busy, playing that game of money, power, prestige, and if that's the whole point of life, that's all there is, I might as well try to be good at it, right?
Yeah.
And so 6 months after passing the bar, I was sitting at my desk reading a mainstream article on quantum physics that talked about the universe being a great thought rather than a great clock. So it was couched in terms that I respected. This was a scientist, it was a physicist and a philosopher, talking about how consciousness is integral to matter and not emergent, that consciousness and matter are one, that all is one, that everything is just this field of awareness from which things emerge. And that gave me intellectual permission to look at my secretary at the time, and looked across the room, and I thought, you two are me. And I believed it. And when that happened, I had this huge heart opening, first time in my life that I truly felt love. And bliss, just absolute bliss, lightning bolts of bliss just running throughout my being. And I experienced ego death, and was just in this beautiful, blissful place of witnessing and just loving awareness for a few weeks. And after a few weeks, the ego came back in with all the spaciousness around it now, just enough to ask, what the hell just happened to me, right? And that began my path of intentional seeking. That began my sadhana. That began a quest that continues to this day to deepen that awakening. To deepen that awakening and continue to deepen my embodiment of it. My first thing I found was Kriya Yoga, Autobiography of a Yogi. Many people may be familiar with that book. I started doing the practices while I was reading the book, found them on YouTube. And 3 months into doing my practices, I had this beautiful dream initiation with my avatar Babaji. And I continued to study and do my practices. I've studied various different institutions, yoga institutions that teach Kriya Yoga. I've studied their material. I ultimately did get initiated physically as well into that lineage and practice. But yeah, that was the beginning of my path, was that awakening, and then literally a decade of cultivation while working my day job and doing my life.
Yeah. And when you got that glimpse, right, even though it took 10 years, in that span, it was something that you just couldn't forget, right? Or something you couldn't just say.
I was a different person.
Yeah. It was because of quantum physics, you said, too, right? You were just like,
just, there's this growing notion in quantum physics, this theory of panpsychism, that everything is consciousness, that at a quantum level, everything is consciousness. In philosophy, we often talk about the problem, the interaction problem of, most Western philosophy is based on this Cartesian notion of duality, that consciousness is separate from matter, and that by some mechanics that we will soon identify and nail down and know exactly how it works, consciousness emerges from physical phenomena. But it really only resides between the two ears of humans, and everything else is more robotic, right?
Yeah.
We're the only ones that are really self-aware. Everything else is pretty mechanistic.
Yeah.
So that's the Western view, which is really insane. But there is this emerging view in quantum physics and other sectors, and even in some, researchers of consciousness. They have yet to find consciousness in the human brain. They have yet to identify those mechanics by which consciousness emerges. And moreover, there's this idea, well, if consciousness and matter are different in nature, how do they interact? If they're different in nature, how do they interact? If one's non-physical and one's physical, how do these two different things interact?
Yeah.
So it's got all these problems that are really, and it's got all these problems because it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding. Everything is consciousness at the most fundamental level. We are manifestations from this cosmic pool of consciousness, experiencing ourselves as finite, right? So we're ultimately infinite. Everything's infinite. But we experience ourselves as finite beings through our limited perspectives.
Yeah.
And the spiritual journey is this journey of continuing to broaden that perspective back into infinity.
Yeah, that's a very apt and simple explanation to it, but I feel like that's very relatable. It's just simply releasing the limitations and dissolving into the limitless.
Yeah,
which
just one thing.
Yeah, that's our natural state. That's actually what we are. That's what's going on. And we're just peeling back the layers bit by bit. Through these practices. We're just slowly and slowly just morphing back into this one essence. It's pretty simple.
It is. It's not that complicated.
I think our egos just overcomplicate the process, but it's really not. Yeah, it's not easy per se. There's going to be pain and ups and downs, one could say, to this path, but it's quite simple in what we're doing.
Yeah. It's just, we got a lot of stuff that's in the way of us being present with truth. And that's that unfolding thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
That peeling back of the onion of all these things that keep us from being present with truth.
So how would you recommend, maybe to somebody that has no clue what we're talking about right now, practices and modalities to peel the layers of the onion back? What are some things that you would, tell somebody or give somebody?
Yeah, well, I'm a tantric yogi, right? I am a tantric yogi that utilizes the discipline and the practices of meditation, pranayama, and the study of sutra, along with the ecstatic and wild and crazy use of entheogenic medicines. And so I view these two paths as very interrelated. I view them as very complementary. If you're not meditating, start meditating, right? That's an easy starting point. Start meditating, do that 5-10 minutes a day, do it twice a day, whatever. Like that is like the standard advice that everyone's going to give you. Right. The problem I noticed after over a decade of my Kriya Yoga practice, where I was just in these beautiful, blissful, non-dual states through just my breath, right, was that most people do not have the incentive to engage in a decade of disciplined meditation in order to notice significant results. And most people will spend years, if not decades, when they begin a meditation practice of simply processing unprocessed, stuck mental and emotional impressions that are stuck in the subtle body, right? When you begin your meditation practice, if you haven't had one, and the older you get, the worse it is because you have more of a backlog. You are simply working through unprocessed mental and emotional impressions that are stuck in the subtle body. You're working on defragging the hard drive, so to speak. You're working on simply getting to a place where there is a gap between the capacity to witness and the monkey mind. You'll spend years doing that, most people. And there's all sorts of beautiful practices for doing that. And I recommend that everyone start there and everyone continue doing that. That you develop a root practice of daily meditation, self-inquiry, and working through the mental and emotional impressions that build up from the past and in the present, so that you are more and more able to abide in a place of loving awareness. Okay? That's the simple basics thing, right? And you can't really avoid it. You can try to distract yourself from it, but being present with presence is really the where you start. Be still and know. Yeah, that's it. But, where I differ from, some of the more, the yogis who are less tantric, is that I see great benefit in working with entheogenic medicines as an acceleration of the spiritual path. And an acceleration of the evolution of consciousness. And with these medicines, and, for instance, like ayahuasca, beautiful teacher. She and I encounter her as the great mother, the divine mother. In medicine space, the first time I sat with her, she appeared to me as Kali, right? This beautiful, fierce Kali with red eyes and lolling tongue, who was just the epitome of fierce compassion.
And strong feminine energy.
This strong feminine wild energy that's just cutting off your head and liberating, right? Forcing you really to confront everything in you that keeps you from being present with truth. And, that practice of working with that medicine is an intense and accelerated purification of your mind, body, and soul, and a releasing and purging of these unprocessed mental and emotional impressions that get stuck in the body from this lifetime and prior lifetimes. You can accomplish in a series of work with her, 3 ceremonies over a week, what would take years, if not decades, to achieve through meditation and psychotherapy, you know?
Yeah.
And so she is an accelerant, but it's not appropriate for everyone, right? That's something that I think it needs to be noted. It's something, if you feel called to it, if you're already, you know, in a pretty, if you already got your meditation down, you know, try an accelerant. And, you know, and also I tell people, you know, you do medicine when you're sick, right? Not just when you're well. So if you're sick too, and you're having trouble meditating, and you've got depression, and you got your anxiety, and you're working through all that stuff, and it's hard, and it's like a weight on your back that's preventing you from even beginning to do a practice, you do medicine. Work with one of these medicines with an experienced and qualified shaman, and it'll help you. You know, if you feel called to it. It's not appropriate for everybody. You know, for people that maybe struggle with some severe mental disease, it might be too much. It might be disorienting. It might make a mental crisis worse. So I don't recommend it for everybody. But, you know, if you feel called to it, it can be one of the best things you can do for yourself, in my opinion.
I agree. And how would you describe how one comes out of this plant medicine psychedelic experience a different person? You know, what is the orientation that it leads somebody down? Does it, for lack of a better word, make somebody happier, a little bit more peaceful in an integrated manner? I know there can be detriment to it, but is it mostly beneficial to somebody's being to do this in a healthy way? Yeah.
And I make a distinction. I don't like the word psychedelics, for instance, because that includes a lot of the synthetics, like ketamine, MDMA, and different things, which they're different, right? Yeah. And what I've noticed with those is that they'll open a doorway of perception that allows you to see a different perspective. But they lack the benevolent archetypal energy associated with it that the natural medicines have. Yeah. You know, the natural medicines, these natural entheogenic medicines that have been used for thousands of years and they have literally co-evolved with humanity, have so much more intelligence, and they have these beautiful benevolent archetypal energies associated with them that are both teachers and healers. They will both heal you and they will both teach you, increasing the overall intelligence of your energetic field. So I would make that distinction between the synthetics and the natural medicines. I align with the natural medicines. I feel like they overall have a much more better holistic healing ability, right? You know, you get holistic healing in a better, more integrated way from them. But when you partake in these medicines, these entheogenic medicines, are associated with archetypal consciousness. Okay? So they are, if you want to think of it in Hindu terms, avatars of different types of archetypal consciousness. So when you eat the flesh of God, which is what you're doing when you partake in one of these sacred medicines, you are partaking in an avatar's energy into your body. You're bringing that energy into your body. And what happens is that energy comes into your body. You receive as much of it as you can. And also that which is not in alignment with that energy starts getting purged from your body. And that's where, like in ayahuasca ceremonies, people do a lot of vomiting. They'll do a lot of pooping, all sorts of stuff, getting rid of hucha, which is a word for bad energy, which is karmic, karma. It is mental, emotional impressions, different things, and physical impurities, all sorts of stuff. So when you partake in one of these medicines, you're partaking in a very high vibrational energy that has a whole lot of intelligence with it. And you're bringing that into your body, and it's purifying your body because you're bringing in a high vibrational energy that is just pushing out all these lower vibrational energies in your body. And it also has this intelligence with it, where you are attuning to the mind of God. You are attuning to an archetypal energy. And that increases the overall intelligence of your energy field. So you are both being healed and you are both learning. Healer, teacher. You are both purifying and you are both also increasing the overall intelligence of your energy system. So when you come out of ceremony, you've dumped a lot of shit. You've let go of a lot of stuff, right? That's both physical stuff of not having a good diet, like so many Westerners, and at this point globally have just a poor diet with a lot of crap in it and a lot of processed foods and excess sugar and different things. So you've gotten rid of a lot of that stuff. You've gotten rid of a lot of karma. You've gotten rid of a lot of mental and emotional impressions that have been, stuck in you for maybe many lifetimes, certainly this lifetime. And you've also got this new perspective that has been downloaded into you, this upgrade to your software, essentially. Mm-hmm. That allows you to see yourself and your life from an elevated perspective. And so you come back, and this is where a lot of people struggle. They'll get this huge up-level in consciousness by working with these medicines, but then they return to the same old life the prior state of consciousness created. Mm-hmm. And that can be really painful. And that's where the integration process begins. Mm. That's the hardest part with these medicines, because you get such a shift in such a short period of time, and you come back to life circumstances created by the prior state of consciousness that was just like a week ago, right?
Yeah, right.
The week ago person created this stuff, and now you're like, what the hell? This is, I don't want anything to do with this.
Yeah.
But that begins this beautiful process of untangling, right? Mm. Which is where the lessons really seep in. Is like untangling the mess, cleaning up your mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to me, I regard the plant medicines as quite literal sacraments. And I know to somebody that doesn't know any better and they've never done it, may seem like some crazy talk to what we're touching upon here, but it's really like when you do it, it's undeniable. When you go through these experiences, when you're in the moment with the spirit, it's like, it's undeniable, and it's like unfathomable, truly uncomprehensible until like you have that felt experience. So it's really like, there's only so much we can talk about it.
Words are inadequate,
Yeah. But it's truly divine. Like, these things are more than just getting high, it's more than just trying to see some colors and for recreation. Like, no, this is like, you are getting connected to higher energies that are way more than meets the eye. Quite powerful.
And that's why I make that distinction between synthetics and the natural entheogenic medicines, held in a good way. Mm-hmm. Is because, the synthetics can be recreational. And I'm not saying recreational is bad. Frankly, I think everyone has the sovereign human right to experiment with their own consciousness. But, the scientists extracted the parts of these medicines that, quote, make you sick often. Like with mescaline, you want the experience of the mescaline, but you don't want to get sick from, like, as you do with peyote and with chuma. And as roadmen and with the Native American church will tell you, you're not getting sick, you're getting well. That purging process is an integral part of the process, because you're letting go of that negative, heavy energy. Uh-huh. You're vomiting up, you're getting rid of it, right? And so, if you have a synthetic, it'll open this doorway of perception, and you'll get to see some fun colors, and you can have a good time and whatever. But you're probably not going to learn much, right? You're not going to learn much, and when you come down from your high, you're mostly going to be the same person, except now this other thing exists, which can be transformative, right? But the way the natural medicines work is they literally take you by the hand, they walk you to a higher state of consciousness, and they show you how to live there.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because you can't stay there your whole life. One can try, and it could be another trap, I feel as though.
Yeah. And Ram Dass talks about that with his experiences with LSD. He kept getting high and trying to stay there, and he kept coming down. And and LSD is a synthetic, right? It's not going to teach you how to live there. It's not a teacher. It's not a healer. It's a gateway. It's a gateway to a different level of consciousness, a gateway to a different, level of perception, but it's not a healer teacher like the natural medicines are, which are archetypal aspects of divine consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So living there, in that wavelength, that frequency, would you say the orientation is toward a sort of service orientation in somebody's being? Like ultimately, down the road, maybe when you work out your stuff, would you say that somebody just becomes like naturally more giving, more selfless, more compassionate, more loving, you could say?
Yeah. And early on the path, you're doing personal work, right? You're dealing with your own shit, your own suffering. And that's where we all start. And that's true of every spiritual path, is when you first start it, you're just trying to escape your own suffering.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when you get in the medicine path. That's very similar. But eventually you get healed enough that you start to dissolve the difference between your suffering and the other people's suffering. Your perception expands beyond the individuated self and starts to expand out into others and include others.
Yeah.
And you realize that it's all my shit.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so since it's all my shit, I have a duty to heal it. I have a duty to help alleviate suffering in all beings because they too are me.
Tatwamasi. Yeah. It seems, it's a duty, right? We have the freedom to not if we really want to, but I guess when you really have that dawning, that revelation of I'm you, you're me, we're all in this together. It's like I said, it's undeniable, and it almost does become obligatory in a way. I feel
it does. Yeah. And this thing they talk about, empaths, right? They feel other people's emotions, and that's just a natural byproduct of the heart opening. As the heart opens, the bridges between you and other people open up and become clear, and it's a two-way channel. You start to really feel the emotions of other people. You start to feel their suffering, their pain. And as you gain more mastery over your boundaries and this, that, and the other, you can choose to turn it off. You can choose to look away. You can choose to create distance between you and them and not be overwhelmed by those things. But the truth of the matter is they too are you. And when you fully open up and allow yourself to dwell in that place, your brother, your sister's suffering is like an injured part of your own body. Why would you not tend to that, right?
Yeah.
Why would you not tend to it?
So powerful. But I think that's the way, is one way or the other. We're all realizing that we're this superorganism in a way.
Yeah.
We're all like different nodes of the same mind. And our seeming separateness is really truly just an illusion. Yeah. And that's more felt. It's like this intuitive sense, because I know that you're on your part of the world and the other side of the screen, and the listener in the future is wherever they are. And there's a seeming separateness, but that innate sameness, it comes to me personally in a form that goes beyond, I guess, even the language of saying you are the same, beyond the visual and the audio. In the stillness that one can find in their own life, it's like this, it's a pinging. Yeah, it's like being connected to the collective unconscious, one may say. It's this, it's just like goes beyond words, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
It's transcendent.
Yeah. It's quite beautiful, though. It's quite beautiful to know that we are all connected by this seeming, it's just like this force of love. That's the truth, man. I know it's cliche to say, but it's really the truth, that we're all, this whole thing that we're in, this thing we call life, is actually all about love. It's not this fear and this separateness, the popular paradigm of like competition and, just being against each other. It's like, no. It's quite contrary. Like
Yeah.
really what's going on here is we're this giant super organism that has lost its way, and we're slowly gaining our sense of similarity, our sense of knowing that we're all the same thing. We're gaining that little by little. That's really the path, and in that, I feel is peace. I think ultimately that's really what what it really all what we're doing it for, is so that we can ultimately escape this seeming chaotic world, this kind of daunting and harrowing world that one may find on Fox News or
Yeah.
on the popular idea of how the world is. It's like, no, it's really about in that dawning of our similarity. It's like somehow in one way or the other, it's okay.
Yeah.
I find like in that intuitive sense is an okayness. Like it's all perfect in one way or
Yeah.
the other. Mm.
Yeah. It's all perfect, and it's so interesting because we begin the spiritual path because we have some desire to escape our suffering,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Because
usually the catalyst, right?
life's hard, right?
Yeah.
And so we begin this path of trying to escape our own suffering, and really to, in a sense, try to escape a world that is mad.
Yeah.
A world that is just so upside down. We're just coming out of the Kali Yuga, and it's a really confusing place right now.
Yeah,
With a
to
lot
say
of
the least.
really confusing place with a lot of suffering, and there is that, and you see this throughout history and throughout these spiritual traditions, and in Christianity, I think maybe in particular, this idea that we're going to experience this hell, we're going to escape this hellish world by going to somewhere else, right? Or this idea of salvation.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to save you and take you somewhere else. The goodies will go to heaven, the baddies will go to hell, and everything will be put right. And I think there's truth in that from this larger perspective, but we got the timeline wrong. I think the goodies go to heaven and the baddies go to hell, but it's all self-created and co-created, and it happens over the course of many lifetimes.
Yeah.
And right now on this earth plane, it's mixed. You got some people living in heaven. You got some people living in hell, sometimes in the same household. And it's all because of different states of consciousness that they have and they're cultivating. And, I wish I could, it would be nice if we could get rid of all of our problems overnight, it'd be beautiful. But the reality is that the only way to really deal with suffering ourselves and at a global level is to deeply confront and be present with the things that are causing suffering. And we can't escape this world. There's no escaping it. Their only path is to go more deeply into it.
Yeah.
To bring more consciousness and more presence into every dark corner of ourselves, our relationships, and everything else. And that by bringing more presence, more consciousness to all those things, we will begin the healing process and the process of putting them right.
Yeah.
Elevating consciousness, elevating the vibration, not just of ourselves, of our relationships, and the world at large. And, that's the hard work. That's the really hard work. That's the karma yogi's work. And I feel like it is the most important work, because when we do these practices, I call it kind of the white robe syndrome. We do these practices and we get to a certain level of purity and happiness and bliss and joy, and we're just lovely. And we got these nice white robes that are all just crystal clean and clear. And we don't want to get contaminated by that messy world outside of us and that lives in other people. We just want to be content in our own purity and happiness and joy and bliss and goodness and all that, right? It's not, you can get so far with that until you realize that they too are you. Their messiness is your messiness. Their pain is your pain. And that's where the Bodhisattva comes in. You know,
Yeah.
I've achieved a certain amount of realization in myself where I can be happy.
Hmm.
That's not enough.
Yeah.
My compassionate heart forces me back out into the world. My compassionate heart forces me more deeply into the world. My compassionate heart will not rest till all beings are free of suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So well said. So the way of the Bodhisattva,
Yeah.
is this like an inevitability with somebody that is on the path, like becoming the shaman? Are we all in our own way becoming the shaman, would you say?
I think so. And one of my mentors, he serves ayahuasca. He has for about 10 years. And he said, this was after ceremony one night. He came and we were working with Hape, and he said, the only real hazard of continuing to work with these medicines is that eventually they'll put you to work. And you better be ready.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've noticed with them. You begin on this path of personal healing, and then you get well enough to hold space for others in some way. And that may or may not include pouring medicine.
Yeah.
But it is that path of getting strong enough, healthy enough, well enough to be able to help others.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of being well is being compassionate and recognizing you have a duty to help others. And you don't do it from a place of willpower. You do it from your own compassionate heart that says, they too are me.
Yeah. So what do you think this is all leading to? Because I often wonder if these things are innately necessary for as long as we call ourselves human, or maybe what we're doing is quite literally building a new world. Some may say we're building a sort of heaven-like physical state. Do you think there'll be a time where we won't need plant medicine, where we'll just naturally be inclined to be where the plant medicine takes us?
Yeah, I think maybe eventually you get to a place where you can take the medicine and it doesn't really make much of a difference.
Yeah.
Right? Because your level of consciousness is already at the vibration of that medicine. And so you don't really need it. And I think that's why in these higher ages, if you think in terms of yugas, they don't really need medicine. They don't use medicine because they're already at the level of consciousness of the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
When we are in these transitory periods like we are now between ages, especially coming out of the Kali Yuga, which is this age of really density, disconnection, and ignorance, we need medicine, right? And if we didn't, it wouldn't make much of a difference. So, when I smoke cannabis, which I rarely do, it really doesn't do much for me, right? Cannabis doesn't really do much for me. I just, it might be useful to meditate a little deeper, but generally it doesn't really do much for me, and it's just not that interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And as I've worked with these master teacher healer plants like ayahuasca, peyote, and wachuma, they're still teaching me. They're definitely still teaching me, and I'm still learning from them. And maybe they have infinite lessons to teach me. But when I work with those medicines, I generally simply become more present and more myself. Right? I'm not like blasted off and just like, in a puddle on the ground. I'm sitting upright, and I'm more present and I'm more myself. I'm more connected to the divine spark of the truth of who and what I am. The energy in my subtle body has been turned up, and there's the addition of this intelligence within me that's teaching me, that's increasing the overall intelligence of my energy field. That's, so and also what I found with the medicine is, I still drink medicine and take medicine for myself to help myself because, I'm still human. I'm still learning. I still got things I'm working on. And sometimes I work with the medicine and it's doing personal work. And that's really important. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I come to the ceremony and I'm feeling great. But there's other people in my life that aren't. They're struggling. And so I drink the medicine for them. I dedicate the merit of my practice to them. I spend my time in ceremony praying for them. And when I do that, when I'm praying for people that are in my life that are suffering, I go right into their suffering. I go right into their suffering. I go right down into the mud with them, and I feel all of it. And I help them, by being present with it, by feeling it, by really sincerely praying for them, and not just praying in the sense of, oh, God, help them. I pray for them, Creator, help me help them. And I go down and I feel it with them, and I work with it. And some of my hardest ceremonies have been praying for other people and feeling their suffering.
Wow.
And one of the most beautiful things I've found about that is when I do medicine, everybody in my life gets better.
Yeah. So the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, everybody in my life gets better.
I believe it. Yeah. Do you credit plant medicine and the experiences of them to your belief in God?
No. I had that big awakening back in 2011, that big Kundalini awakening, people might call it, where I had a non-dual perception of God as ever new bliss and love.
Mm-hmm. So that's your credit. That was the catalyst to it.
Yeah, that was like, I was an atheist before that. And then I had this abrupt awakening, not really abrupt, but it from a certain level of consciousness, it was abrupt. And I had that awakening and then this realization that God is infinite love and infinite bliss, and I too am that. This realization of self-realization. I will say that it's a funny thing that I was doing my Kriya Yoga for a decade, but I didn't have a very developed relationship with the gods of Hinduism, and I wouldn't have considered myself Hindu. But in my practice working with the plant medicines, what archetypal consciousness shows up? It's the Hindu deities. Mm-hmm. For me, that's the astral clothing that these archetypal energies wear when I'm interacting with them. So an ironic thing is that my medicine work has made me extraordinarily Hindu and devotional.
Yeah.
And these are the names of God, the appearances of God, the qualities of God that show up for me. Now, I will say that they are archetypal manifestations of God. They are not the absolute.
Yeah.
Absolute is pure consciousness. Absolute is formless. Absolute is ever new bliss. It's absolute, right? But, God being infinite, God can be both personal and impersonal, and both are true.
Well said. Yeah. Would you postulate that these Hindu deities and the archetypes of them and their images quite potentially come from plant medicine experiences, i.e. religion, the religions that we know and the stories behind them are actually just manifestations of people tripping?
I think it's a little complicated because I think, as Graham Hancock says, we are a species with amnesia. Mm-hmm. And the memory in India and a lot of the Asian countries and cultures is the memory of the prior yugas, these higher ages, right? So they remember a time when humanity was much more evolved, and the residue, the stories, have been transmitted down through the generations and are still alive in that way. So I do think that in the higher ages, You get to a level of consciousness where you're at or above the level of consciousness of the medicine, and you're just, always having this beautiful, ongoing, embodied relationship with the divine, because you're at a frequency, and the planet's at a frequency where that's all possible. I do think that in Hinduism, that mushrooms and hashish, cannabis, have been an integral part of retaining that level of consciousness between yugas, right? Mm-hmm. As a medicine, when we dip down and we forget. These medicines are beautiful modes of remembering. Mm-hmm. They're beautiful modes of healing and learning and elevating consciousness and vibration. And eventually, you may get to a point where you don't need them. My first experience with ayahuasca was with a shaman down in Peru. He's 80 years old. He started apprenticing with his uncle when he was 8. He's done over 6,000 ceremonies.
Wow.
He no longer needs to drink medicine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He'll smoke mapacho, which is tobacco, but he can get to that level of consciousness with just that. He doesn't have to drink medicine anymore. Mm-hmm. And he is like the animated forest. He is the animated forest, and it's just a beautiful, loving man. Mm. But he, after a long life and a long period of working with the medicine and serving it, he doesn't need to drink it physically to vibrate at that frequency. Mm. So
wow. And that also goes to show they're non-toxic. If you can do it 6,000 times in a lifetime,
oh yeah,
and he's still his cognition is still there, then it's cool to show that they're very safe in that manner.
Yeah. They are, and my teachers say they are elixirs of health and vitality. Mm.
Mm. Yeah, they're probably healthy. Like actually, like not only like mentally and spiritually healthy, but physically. It's all one thing ultimately. So
yeah, super. They're super healthy.
Yeah.
I will say this, in January, I went down to Peru for some deep work. And I worked for 2 weeks with one of my teachers with ayahuasca. So I had 5 ceremonies with ayahuasca, drinking pretty much every other day. And then following that, one of the things I do, Smiling Jaguar Retreats, is to lead people down to Peru to work with one of my teachers down there. And he serves Wachuma. And we do this pilgrimage going from the coast of Peru at Chiclayo and ancient pyramids, and having ceremony and going up to Chavin and then up to the Andes, right? And that's 2 weeks, 7 ceremonies. And so I did 5 in January. I did 5 ceremonies with ayahuasca. Then I did 7 ceremonies with Wachuma. I was drinking medicine every other day for that month. And I said, I'll be dead or glowing at the end of it. And I was glowing, right?
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful, man.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
It wasn't easy, but it was good. It was good work.
Yeah. It's courageous in that way, honestly. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is most, and I'm not judging, I don't care, but I mean, I'm also speaking for myself, aren't willing to do that. The fact that you're able to do that and come out the other side and speak about it, it's like, I bow to you in that. That's very, it's admirable.
I hope to make it my yearly practice, because it was the most profound thing I've ever done in my life.
I can't imagine. Yeah. Wow. Mm.
But, I think that's why in this Western culture, which is so confused, and there's such a fear of self-knowledge. I think that's why these medicines have been made illegal and outlawed, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We are afraid. We're terrified of knowing ourselves. We're terrified of being present with the truth of who and what we are.
It's ironic.
We're terrified of it.
Yeah. I think it's a collective guilt, because we've come so far that the illegality and the prohibition of them is just a byproduct of our collective guilt of not knowing ourselves, because we've been so off our rocker for so long.
Yeah.
It's like just continuing the lie. But I think the cat's out of the bag.
If people wake up, it'll destroy everything, because everything's built on a lie.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening as we speak right now, is that
Yeah.
we're figuring out how much we've been living in that lie, and
Yeah.
slowly people are getting the message.
Yeah.
And it seems, actually, I said slow, but actually I think it's very quick in the scheme of
It's
time.
accelerating.
Yeah, it's exponential. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting times we live in, for sure.
Yeah.
Interesting times. I
Yeah.
do
One of the things, are you in the United States?
Yep, I live outside of Boston.
Outside of Boston? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the things I'm working on, and I was a lawyer for 10 years, still am a lawyer. I traded in my briefcase for a medicine bag, but I'm still licensed. And I actually got raided by feds about a month ago.
Damn.
Around Good Friday. I'd ordered some I'd ordered some wachuma from Peru from some beautiful people down there, and they caught it at the border. Possession of San Pedro is not illegal, but they confused it with peyote, I think, which is, and because of the mescaline. Anyway, I had they did a controlled delivery, and I ended up with 3 agents at my door with a search warrant, wanting to search my house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my response was, nothing I have here is illegal, because first of all, San Pedro is legal to possess, but also I'm protected by the First Amendment and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which say that I have the right to exercise my faith. And these medicines, working with them, are my faith.
Mm.
Well, they still searched my whole damn house, right? They tore it apart, looking in every corner, and under every bed and all that. And I don't know what they'll do. They may try to bring charges. If so, that's fine. I'm prepared to fight them and defend myself. And I'm happy to defend my faith. But a lot of what they do is they'll target people who are in charge of medicine churches and raid them and try to intimidate them. And it's a travesty, because it is the persecution of a religious minority. Mm-hmm. Because the people using these medicines for spiritual and religious purposes are doing so sincerely. And they are protected both by the Constitution and by statute. But law enforcement, because, there is a law in the book that makes the practice of your religion illegal, and you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. Mm-hmm. And that's the crazy world we live in. And I'm hoping to start an organization with a friend who's kind of prominent in this area, a civil rights organization, to protect people who are using these medicines, these entheogens, for spiritual and religious purposes. Because I think it's needed. And it's something we're going to have to fight for, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we think, or just because the cat's out of the bag, we think we don't have to suffer the repercussions of the illegality of it. But I guess in your case, that's not true.
Yeah. It's still there. I mean, it's still a thing, especially in the Bible Belt.
Oh, yeah. Where do you live again?
Kentucky.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They're not hip down there.
No.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's so unfortunate we're living in the shadow of the drug war still. I believe, I've said this before, so I apologize for anybody that's heard it. I've said it ad nauseum. I believe that the prohibition of these substances is going to be looked at in the future as a crime against humanity. Truthfully, I do believe that there's so many people that could benefit from it, and the fact that it's illegal leads to people, 1, not knowing about it, 2, not having access, 3, just not having any interest or just anything at all. They don't, it just turns off people just because of the illegality of it, which is totally not seated in truth whatsoever. So I do believe in the future it'll look back at it as a kind of like a scar in the history of our country and the world.
Well, it's a continuation of the colonial and imperial attempt to outlaw indigenous spirituality.
Yeah,
plain and simple.
Yeah, that's true.
It began with the Roman Empire and the Catholic Church of, going after the Celts who were mushroom eaters.
Yeah,
right.
Mm-hmm.
And so they wanted to disconnect those people from their land and from the spirits of their land, and to make them good citizens of the empire, good soldiers of the empire, so that they would go out and kill their other brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. And within a generation or two, the colonized become colonizers. And that's the way colonialism works. That's the way empire works. And it metastasizes like a cancer.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and then the empire moved to Great Britain, and with a lot of those same prejudices and that same mentality, the same mind virus.
Mm-hmm.
And then from Great Britain, it came to the United States, which is the current seat of empire and colonialism. And the first thing the Catholic Church and the missionaries did when they came to the United States was to go after the Native Americans and to outlaw, or at least, condemn and persecute people who were using natural medicines as heretics and, what have you. Mm-hmm. And that legacy continues. Mm-hmm. That legacy continues. This is a complete continuation of the imperial colonialist agenda to disconnect us from nature, in order to disconnect us from ourselves, in order to disconnect us from other people, so that we will fight wars and we will work as wage slave.
Yeah.
It's this whole program of enslavement.
Mm-hmm. To be obedient.
Yeah.
And ultimately disconnect us from God, to know that.
Absolutely. Disconnect us from truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you connect yourself with a higher sense of power, then that power, that colonialization of the mind, holds truly no power. And
no,
it's
doesn't.
like this Babylon, one may say, doesn't really want to give up their power. So, yeah, that's the story of old, man. Who knows how long that has been going on. But yeah, it's still going on in today's world, just in a slightly different form. The colonization has become less so of like colonization of land and more so of like a colonization of the mind now. That's where it's seated.
Yeah.
It's
always been about consciousness, though.
Yeah, at the deep level, it's really all. This is where it all starts.
Yeah,
truly. I don't know. I do foresee a lot of that darkness and distortion of our reality, but I also do see a lot of hope. I actually do think the lights. I see the light in the darkness at the end of the tunnel. I do believe we're moving toward a better world. It's just gonna take a little bit of time, but in actuality, I don't think it's going to take that much time. I think, like we said before, it's accelerating, and eventually it's going to reach critical mass and to a point of exponentiality. And then
we're hitting an inflection point for sure.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. We're getting there for sure. Yeah, I don't know. Do you see hope for the future? Do you see people getting on this wavelength? Do you see more people living in darkness, or both? Do you see like a rift happening?
I'm incredibly optimistic because I have faith in the permanence and the deathlessness of consciousness. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
And so things may get really ugly at the 3D level and the physical level, and things may go to hell, right?
Yeah.
But consciousness endures, and consciousness persists, and the turning of the ages persists. And so, we're in this mutation phase between yugas. We are in, the death of the old world and the birth of the new, and both are happening at the same time. Yeah. And a part of that process is the confronting of all of the unconscious dark stuff that has been unconscious. And that can be ugly, that can be messy, that can be destructive. We may blow ourselves up. But we blow ourselves up. Okay. Those spirits, they leave the body. I believe there's this sorting process that goes on. We go find another body and we continue our evolution. Then eventually we'll resume the evolution on this planet once she's healed enough, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's all a choice ultimately. It's all a choice about what this planet, how we're going to behave this time, and what we're going to choose this time, whether we're going to have this beautiful healing and moving toward consciousness and light and love, and this beautiful ascension into a golden age in a relatively, painless way. That's a possibility if we choose it, if enough of us choose it. If we choose to heal, if we choose to truly confront the darkness and transmute it, that's a possibility. We can also have this war between those seeking to awaken and those who continue to self-sabotage, those who continue to try to put out the light because they're afraid of it. We can have this tension of going on. We can do that. That's one possibility. And eventually we'll blow ourselves up or over a long, messy process, awaken and heal, right? That's a possibility. There's also the possibility of the total darkness scenario where we just blow ourselves up and have to start over somewhere else.
Yeah.
But the story goes on, is what I'm getting at. Exactly. There is no end to it.
Yeah.
There's no end to it. And so be optimistic because there's no end to the story. There may be a dark patch. There may be some ugliness and drama, but consciousness goes on. The evolution of consciousness goes on. The story goes on. And this is a transition point from a dark age into an awakening age. And that's permanent, right? That's truth. And how it plays out in the particulars, it can be interesting.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting.
Yeah. Definitely interesting. May you be born in interesting times.
Yeah.
I think we are.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I think that's a good note to wrap this thing up at. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, wherever you are on this journey, we've been in pretty esoteric realms for most of this conversation. But wherever you are on the journey, my recommendation to you is to simply start doing constructive practices to awaken and deepen that awakening.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah. And anybody can find out more about these from your work, right?
Yeah, sure. They can go to ZacharyAdama.com. They can go to smilingjaguar.com if they're interested in some of my medicine work and offerings. And I have a Substack or a newsletter that I write that people can check that out. It's called Zachary Adama in the Medicine. But I also do, one-on-one work with people if they want to do that. And we started a medicine church back in October, The Infinite Way. And it's actually a tantric church, non-dual tantra and the medicine. And, to me, those things go together in a very seamless and beautiful way and complementary way. But yeah, I'm doing a lot of different things, and if they can find out about them like that. So
awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, I'll link everything down below for anybody listening. But I appreciate your time, effort, and wisdom. I think this was an amazing conversation. I don't have anything else to say. I like The Infinite Way. That's a great name. I might have to title the
that podcast. Came to me in ceremony.
Yeah, The Infinite Way. I like that, man.
Yeah.
That's good. I like it. The way is the way is the way. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
Appreciate you. Appreciate anybody that listened this long. Peace and love. Peace and love to everyone. Goodbye.